We're talking about one of the best villains I've ever seen in my life, Manshoon. His concept is very simple, but is expanded on a lot, therefore meaning that players can understand it, a DM can understand it, and they can all realise that it's very bad. Welcome to Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Today we're talking about one of the best villains in my opinion, Manshoon, which in essence, he is, in comparison to a lot of other big villains, not that powerful. He's a, 18th level wizard, 19th level wizard, something like that. Pretty good. He has a lot of good spells that he can use and is a very powerful guy. We'll talk about that in a sec, maybe if I remember to talk about the stats. So, Manshoon is not Manshoon. Manshoon in this campaign is a clone of the original Manshoon, who is somewhere else. It's kind of alluded to that maybe the real Manshoon exists somewhere, but for now we're working with a clone of Manshoon. A fully functioning, normal clone. A couple interesting things, he lost a hand and now he has a metal hand. Don't use that to make an attack. Just do like Firebolt, it's so much better. He is actually one of the founders of the Zhentarim, which is a legendary faction in all of D&D lore, and especially a strong force in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, because they're like one of the two big main bad guy groups, if you will. Manshoon would very much like to rule the city, just like, you know, most people. And he wants to get that big old cache of dragons, which is money, gold in Waterdeep, so that he can, you know, get a little bit of bribing going on with some of the masked lords to eventually become the open lord and rule properly. The open lord is like, I'd attribute to them to like the prime minister, where they are the face of their cabinet, if you will, and they have more of a say over the rest of the cabinet, but the cabinet still has like a big vote. He also wants to gain control of the Black Network, which is, you know, kind of like the Xanathar Guild and the Zhentarim are fighting. He wants that to stop and just win, so that, you know, there's no more conflict going on underground, because he wants that to stop. Zhentarim are dying. You know, it's a business investment. Manshoon's base is Kolat Towers, which we'll talk about a little bit. My party that was doing Waterdeep Dragon Heist, we've kind of veered off the rails. They'd gone to Kolat Towers to investigate because they were talking to some other Zhentarim and had managed to, like, figure out where their leader was. And yeah, there you go. It was very interesting. I'll talk more about the dungeon in a sec. This one sentence in the book gives you so much potential. Manshoon creates copies of himself using the Simulacrum spell. That's cool. You can send like a masked Manshoon copy to go and fuck with the party a bit, and then when they kill them and they're like left unsatisfied, they take off the mask and it's like, oh, they're snow now, great. His success hinges on not attracting the attention of others who would thwart him before his plans come to fruition. Manshoon is a very secretive villain and keeps entirely to himself. Of all the villains in the Dragon Heist game that I've ran, he's remained the most mysterious. My party met the Castellantas and Jarlaxle. They have heard of the Xanathar and know that he is a very obvious presence. Manshoon is not known by the general public, and therefore is also not known to the party that well. They've had run-ins with him technically, but they don't really know him. They don't know what he's capable of, and they don't know who he is. All that they know is that he's a powerful wizard because he can make copies of himself. And if you choose him, the game takes place in winter, which is a weird detail. I don't really like how Dragon Heist does that, looking back on it. I might have said that I liked it earlier, but I don't anymore. It feels like an unnecessary layer that a DM has to kind of like worry about. Let's talk about Manshoon's stats, shall we? I haven't done this on a bad guy before, because I might have done, I'm not sure. But there isn't much to talk about with Manshoon other than his absolutely fucking gigantic spell list, because he's a 18th level wizard, basically, who has no right being that smart. Dude has a robe of the Archmagi and a staff of power, so his AC is 19, which is crazy. His Staff of Power gives you a +2. Robe of the Archmagi makes your AC 15 plus Dex. Very powerful. His hit points aren't anything to write home about, 126 on average, which I normally go with averages for predetermined NPCs for the sake of balance. 30 feet speed. 10 strength, what you'd expect for a wizard, I'd expect minus. Dexterity's 14. Again, wizards kind of get a little bit of dexterity. Constitution's 12. Bit low. Generally, I find that wizard players prioritize Constitution a little bit over dexterity, because health is more valuable than armor class in the long run. Intelligence is 23 for a +6. Pretty mint. Other than that, Wisdom's 15, Charisma's 16. He's got some decent saving throws. The typical Archmage abilities. He also has Dark Vision despite being a human, which is a fun little detail that you can perhaps figure out yourself. Who knows? He knows a lot of languages, which is something you can play around with him as well. If you're intending to run him, I definitely recommend checking out the Staff of Powers abilities. It gives him a whole nother spell list, as well as a few extra neat features that he can use in a snip. The Robe of the Archmagi is all accounted for in the stat block in comparison to the staff, so you don't need to worry about reading that. So yeah, Manshoon is an 18th level spellcaster. His spell save DC is 21, which is ridiculous, and he has a plus 15 to hit with spell attacks. That's mainly due to his large amount of magic items, his massive intelligence. His spellcasting is really where Manshoon shines, because, you know, 18th level wizard. I want to mainly talk about the higher level spells that you'll have access to with him that you might want to look up if you're planning to run him for a combat encounter. Specifically, the way that his simulacrums work. The way simulacrum works is that normally the simulacrum will have half as many hit points as you normally would, and everything else remains normal. The way that the game does this is very smart. It's specifically bent the rules of Simulacrum because Manshoon's done it. So instead of that, he can only cast up to, I believe, 5th level spells, but have all of his hit points and everything else to go with it, so that he doesn't die as quickly, which is an interesting touch to me. So in terms of like the big spells that you're probably going to want to keep track of with him, he has Counterspell. This is going to make your party go, oh fuck. He has Sending, which is something fun. You can kind of like play with the party a bit if they know his identity. He has Polymorph, which is the bane of everyone's existence, especially if a enemy uses it on the party and turns them into a little thing, and then they're like, well fuck. And then a party member hits the other one and they've wasted their action. But so is Manshoon, sometimes. Polymorph is just a big fuck you to a DM, not a player. Players get to dick around with the spell so much. There is some interesting stuff here. He can cast Wall of Force, which is an amazing way to just say fuck you to the party early levels, because unless they have Disintegrate, they ain't getting through that thing. There's also Bigsby's Hand and Scrying, which is fun. Bigsby's Hand is like, watch Scanlan Shorthalt do his thing in Critical Role. And Scrying is, I will stare into my crystal ball and see where you are. He has Simulacrum, obviously. Feeble Mind, Mind Blank. For some reason, Wizards of the Coast really likes Mind Blank. It's not that good. It's okay, but it's an 8th level spell. It's not worth it when Manshoon could potentially Feeble Mind someone instead. And 9th level is Imprisonment and Power Word Kill. Crazy. Watch my Power Word Kill video just to get a gist of how crazy that spell is. But yeah, I really recommend it. He has some other attacks as well. He can use his Staff of Power to a moderate success and can punch people with his fist. I wouldn't really recommend doing that so much. Keep Manshoon, don't get him in melee. Let's talk about Kolat Towers. I ran the first couple floors of this before my party eventually had to flee, or one of them had to flee while the other one was dying, and then I did a fun little thing where I turned them into a simulacrum for a bit. It was a pretty fun element. I definitely recommend doing that with a more experienced player, one that could perhaps do a more convincing job of being a fake, if you know what I mean. Kolat Towers, their concept is hiding in broad daylight. It is a large set of towers that people rumour to be abandoned, but there's a bunch of stuff going on in there. They just keep the lights off and have a massive barrier around it, which is in the lore technically a 10th level spell, so it can't be like Dispel Magicked or whatever. There's some specific ways to get in, I believe. Oh no, you can dispel it, I apologise. You can dig under it, but guards are probably going to find you and they'll put a stop to it. And it specifically says like veterans as well. CR3 guys with 3 attack, multi-attack, and like 60 health a pop. Yeah, they don't want you digging through it. You can teleport through. You can like Dimension Door or Misty Step through. You can also cast Disintegrate on it and it just gets rid of a 10-foot square of the wall, and then it only lasts for 1 minute. The opening lasts for 1 minute. So you can't really properly dispel the entire thing. You can only dispel a small portion of it. That thing's up forever unless you destroy a rune in the building. Other than that, there's nothing massive to tell you about in here. There's a Bulgara in here, which is fun. The players can let that loose and have a little bit of fun with that. Going into Kolat Towers is going to be a wizard's paradise because there are a lot of wizards there with a lot of spell books on them, so they can yoink those and get more spells and stuff like that. It's sick. Very sick. Other than that, I don't really have anything to tell you. Manshoon, of all the villains, is the one that you're probably going to want to like not use too many things with. You want the players to be scared of what they're going to do, and Manshoon is kind of mysterious in his ways a lot, so make sure that kind of like your in comparison to, you know, the Xanathar very obviously sending a bunch of monsters to go and try to kill the party, Manshoon is very sneaky about it. He has not directly messed with the party in any sort of way, I believe, so that's kind of what I've done. He's not my main villain or anything, but I didn't actually choose a main villain until I figured, okay, this is the one that I feel is the most involved with the story at this moment, so that's what I decided. But yeah, that's Manshoon for you. If you have any other ideas with him, it's pretty sick to mess around with them. There's a lot of references to him existing in like Dungeon of the Mad Mage as well. I think that elaborates a bit more on his, you know, backstory, where he came from, what his vibe is, which I don't like, really, in my opinion. I think he should remain pretty mysterious, but hey, that's just me. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Waterdeep. The next one will be discussing the final villain, and probably my favourite one, Jarlaxle. He's kind of like the devilish rogue type, you know what I mean. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. You guys have been really responding to these sorts of series, so I really appreciate it. Thank you, and